This video brought to you by my patrons. Hello everyone, I'm Benjamin and this is Black Steel GMing. Now, I was halfway through making this video and my computer froze, so luckily it saved this and I am going to give you a quick recap. One of my patrons has asked me to do up a character for them with a rather special brief. They want a non-combatant. Not just, a not particularly fighty character. A character who has no combat focus at all. No attacks, they don't carry weapons, they don't wear armor. Now, this is Dungeons and Dragons, it's a combat game, but that's doable. And I'm going to walk you through how I've been doing it. But the game that they're going to be playing in has several house rules. It's roll-up stats with a very generous setup. They get 20 charisma automatically, and their stats are 4d6, rerolling all ones, and keep rerolling the ones, then drop the lowest. So, as you can see, that has resulted in a rather impressive stat array. Now I am going to go through our choices for this character. So, final important note is that this GM allows you to trade 2 attribute points for a feat at first level. And we did that. So, without further ado, let's get back to where we were. So, our character is a Wood Elf Entertainer with the 1 level of Bard and 2 levels of Peace Cleric. The general concept we're going for is the ability to dump a ton of dice to assist any of our friends in practically anything. So, Strength 12, Dexterity 18. Because we're not wearing armor, that's going to be our entire armor class, and it also boosts our initiative. And I do not need to tell you, that's important because that's how we're going to be getting our sanctuary spells out. Constitution, not very high. We got quite a lot of somewhat low rolls. But again, hopefully we're not going to be getting hit that much. We're not going to be going in anyone's face. Intelligence, not particularly important. Dump stat. Wisdom, we had 17 base, +1 for being a wood elf, +1 for chef, 19 total. Charisma, 20 because that's a campaign. We've traded all of our weapon proficiencies for tool proficiencies. So, we have Elvish and Common on our languages. 2 languages, not bad. Disguise Kit from our entertainer background. Pan flute, lute, drums, and lyre. Between being a bard and being an entertainer, that's 4 instrument proficiencies. We are a one-man band. Cooking utensils, which we get from our chef. Now, cooking utensils are good. They can be used to boost our diplomacy. They can be used to heal people. Because one of the things this character does is out-of-combat healing. And they do it well. So, specifically, with cook's utensils, we can give ourselves advantage on medicine, which is one of our skills, kind of important. Because, we make... literally, a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down. We can also use it to boost survival, which we don't have, but we've got 14, +4 on our wisdom, so we're not terrible at survival. So, cook's utensils, that's a nice bonus. And obviously this is a character who is going to be cooking and entertaining a lot. And our brewer's supplies will help us with that immensely. Because, for a start, it means that we can do the meal and the drinks, which is very important. Ask anyone, You've got to know exactly what wine goes with what. It also gives us another angle for advantage with medicine, which specifically grants insight when you are treating someone suffering from alcohol poisoning or when using alcohol to dull pain. Useful. Can be used for advantage on persuasion. We're not combatants, so being able to persuade people well is important. We can use it for portable water, to purify water. It's a very useful thing to have. It's a surprisingly useful proficiency in general. Oh, and we can use it to detect poison. and we can use it to potentially just ignore the effects of alcohol, which is awesome. We can just drink forever because we're proficient with brewing tools. I'm not sure that's how it works. Anyway, our secondary support ability here is Alchemist Supply Proficiency. It doesn't have many skill synergies for us, but we can create various alchemical concoctions like acid, alchemist fire, antitoxin, oil, perfume, or soap. And we can make those at half price, one per long rest. That's pretty good. We can probably also go and create healing potions. Not sure if those would be Alchemist supplies or a Herbalism Kit, but we have both just in case. So, Herbalism Kit is yet another vector for advantage on our medicine. We are really good at medicining. We can identify plants, we can do nature and herbalism, we can find plants, and in theory, find plants can be used to reduce the cost of materials through our alchemist supplies, since we can find them ourselves. And that's pretty good. But it gets better, because you remember how our brewer's kit allowed us to detect poison. Well, our herbalism kit allows us to identify poison. So this character is really, really useful to have around on that front. Now, our final toolkit is Weaver's Tools, and that's a bit of an odd one, but we have got a reason for it. And the primary reason for it is it allows us to alter and create clothing. And if you'll see, we've also got the disguise kit up there. This means that in social circumstances, this character is a force multiplier. If we're sneaking into a cultist lair and we steal cultist robes, we are not going to be walking around in ill-fitting cultist robes. This character can change the cultist robes to fit us, and that's advantage on disguise for the entire group right there. You can use it to create clothing. Oh, we don't have any cultist robes. No problem, I can make some. Again, this character is able to use this skill to give whole group buffs in the case of a social thing. You can also use it to modify clothing so that it fits better over people's armor. So it's not obvious they're wearing armor underneath their cultist robes or whatever. So yeah, again, this is really a social skills weapon. Okay. Now, we're going to quickly talk about healing. So, this character has the chef feat. That was, we traded 1 point of intelligence and 1 point of strength for that. So, good trade for me. And now, what the chef feat does is it's +1 to constitutional wisdom. We use wisdom, obviously. Proficiency with the cook's utensils, which is, we've got quite the other proficiencies tab. As part of a short rest, we can prepare special food, providing you have ingredients and cooking utensils on hand. You can create enough for 4+ your proficiency bonus, and at the end of the short rest, any creature who ate the food and spent 1 or more hit dice to regain hit points gains an extra D8. So that's that's 6 people at this level. That's potentially 68 points of healing every short rest for free, as long as everyone is spending at least 1 hit dice. So that doubles the investment for most hit dice. But wait, there's more. We have a bard in the group, like a dedicated bard, and they have Song of Rest, and that stacks with Chef. So, spending 1 hit dice will get you 1d6 from Song of Rest plus 1d8 from Chef. Plus, we have another person in the group with the Cook's King Utensil Proficiency. They can assist. That's an extra hit point per hit dice on top of that. So, that's just a really good passive healing buff that will make hit dice last a lot longer. And this build in particular is insanely useful if you're using variant rules for D&D and you use the variant where you have a short rest is 8 hours and a long rest is 1 week, because in that variant you're going to be using hit dice to heal on on short rests a lot, and you're not going to be recovering them very often. So you want to get as much value per hit dice as possible. And a bard chef is perfect for that. You can heal so much free hit points. But there's more healing to be had here, which I'll get to in a bit. So, as a wood elf, we get Dark Vision, Fey Ancestry, Trance, and Mask of the Wild, which is allows us to hide in natural mists and light foliage and whatnot. Very useful. We've taken a dip into Bard to get 5 Bardic Inspirations a day. We've got 1 Channel Divinity, and we've got 2 Emboldening Bonds a day. So, what Emboldening Bond does is you pick 2 people within 30 feet of you. Proficiency people, which in this case is 2, within 30 feet of you. Then, for the next 10 minutes, every once per round, they get plus 1d4 on an attack roll, a skill check, or a saving throw. Now, if you do the math, that means that because that's 100 rounds and it affects 2 people, that's 200 d4 of potential buffing. You're never going to find yourself getting that much value out of it, unless possibly you're in a Helm's Deep scenario. But, under normal circumstances, that's probably going to be about, if we're talking combat, maybe 5d4 or 6d4 value, but that's still pretty good, and you do that twice a day, and you get more uses on more people as you level up. And that stacks with Bardic Inspiration. So if you want someone to definitely succeed, you've got options, and we're going to be expanding that. So Balm of Peace is our last one. This one, you can take an action, move up to your speed without provoking attacks of opportunity, and everyone that you pass by heals 2d6 plus your charisma modifier hit points. Every ally you pass by. And you can do that once per rest, because that uses your Channel Divinity. And if you haven't used your Channel Divinity and you're about to start a short rest, or a long rest for that matter, you could use this to heal the party before you start the rest and get that resource back, effectively free healing. And with speed 35, we're marginally better at it than most people. Okay, so that's a pretty good combo. And now let's talk buffs, because where we were up to in the last video was we were doing cantrips. We get 2 bard cantrips, and we get 3 cleric cantrips. So these are our bard cantrips. We have Minor Illusion, which is a generally useful spell. We can create either a static visual illusion or a sound illusion. This one's pretty much limited by your creativity, but even outside of its offensive and defensive applications, it also works really nicely to complement our performer, because this character is an entertainer. We've got four instrument proficiencies and +7 on perform. We're also picking up message as a bard, and we're using that to act as a communications hub of sorts. So in a social setting, this allows us to pass messages without being overheard. And it's not quite as good as telepathy, but it's cheap and has a decent range on it. You know? It's a good thing to have for just keeping the group in contact. And that's kind of what you want. So, now our cleric cantrips. First up, Guidance. This is one of the best cantrips in the game, bar none. You cast it, concentration, lasts up to a minute, and it can be expended for +1d4 on a skill or ability check. This stacks with our +1d4 from Emboldening Bond, and our +1d6 for Bardic Inspiration. Additionally, because none of these have to be used the turn that they're cast, you can use all of them and then aid another on someone, which gives them advantage on their check. So advantage +2d4 +1d6. It is very hard to fail that. That is almost guaranteed success. Our second cantrip is going to be much the same. Resistance. Now, Resistance is a cantrip that, again, 1 minute, concentration, single target, gives +1d4 on their next saving throw. Again, this stacks with Emboldening Bond. So potentially that's +2d4. That's an average of +5, which comes out as comparable to advantage and stacks with advantage. So if you know that your friends are going somewhere dangerous, you drop this on the person who's taking point and is likely to eat a fireball or whatever, and the odds are good that they will make their save. Our final one here is going to be Mending. Spare the Dying is pretty crap. We've got a really good medicine skill and plenty of ways to get advantage on that, so we don't need to invest in improving our medicine skill at all. We don't need to, replace it with a cantrip. The range is nice, but this character is probably going to be able to just move over to them. Okay, Mending, on the other hand, it combines really nicely with our Weaver's tools. And it allows us to repair cloak. Because, the last thing you want on your cultist robes that you're using to infiltrate somewhere is obvious sword stab wounds. We do have an arcane caster with prestidigitation who can clean up the blood. We've got Mending here, so we can repair them good as new. Then we've got our Weaver's tools. We can alter them to fit. Boom. We have really nice disguises, easily. Okay, first level spells. So, because our class is stack, we've got 4 and 2. Now, as a bard, we get... I need to look this up because it's been a teeny while. Our first level bard has 4 first level spells known. So, let's pick some 4 first level spells that are good to have. Now, because our charisma is capped out and our wisdom isn't, we're actually going to learn our healing spells from our bard list. So, Cure Wounds and Healing Word are both cast as bard spells. And so we're going to use this to designate the bard spells. Now, we've got 2 more. Featherfall is a just generally useful spell to have because you don't want it until you want it, and when you want it, you really want it. So that's a nice one because we're going to have plenty of spells known. We might as well make that a utility. And to complement all this talk of disguises that I've been having, we are going to take Disguise Self. Because this is a character who will benefit from that. Okay, now as a cleric, we get our wisdom modifier of +4, plus our level of 2 is 6 spells known. 6 spells prepared, sorry. And we do have access to second level slots, so we can take them, I believe. So, now we are a cleric of peace. And that gets us 2 free spells known. And these are always prepared. And they are Heroism and Sanctuary. Both are fantastic. Now, Heroism is a spell that it's really amazing. So what it does is every round it gives the target a pool of temporary hit points that tops up every round. Now it's not a huge pool, but it doesn't need to be. It's equal to your wisdom modifier in this instance. So that is 4 hit points every round. Assuming that the target is hit for at least 4 hit points a round, that is effectively 40 hit points of damage that you do not need to heal over 10 rounds, which is its duration. But that's not the only thing it does. Immunity to Frightened is the other effect, which, immune to Frightened is excellent. And at higher levels, it scales really well by hitting multiple targets. So, effectively, that's a force multiplier right there. The second spell we get as a Peace Domain Cleric is Sanctuary. And Sanctuary is the key to this character's being alive after a fight abilities. You see, how Sanctuary works is... Let me quickly find the description. Sanctuary, 1 minute duration, no concentration, bonus action casting time, up to 30 foot range, which is good if you ever need to ward someone else who is wounded or whatever. But basically, until the spell ends, any creature who attacks the warded creature with an attack or a harmful spell must first make a wisdom saving throw. On a failed save, they must choose a new target or lose the attack or spell. So, effectively, anyone who wants to attack us needs to make a DC 14 wisdom saving throw first. Now, this doesn't protect against AoE like Fireball, and if we cast a spell that targets an enemy creature or make an attack on an enemy creature, this effect ends. Now, technically, that doesn't preclude us using class abilities that affect enemy creatures, like our Channel Divinity to turn and destroy undead. But I would say, as the GM, that that's within the spirit of the spell, and would say that that would end the effect. However, it doesn't matter, because if you will notice, we're not going for any spells that affect the enemy. We passed up on Fairy Fire, which is one of the best combat buffs out there, or debuffs out there, in order to get Disguise Self, because Fairy Fire would target the enemy, and we don't want that. So, now let's look at what other spells we can get our hands on, because, Sanctuary is going to be kind of our go-to surviving thing. Now, as a cleric, we have plenty of options, but our first one is Bless. This is going to hit most of, if not all of the party, and oh, look at that, we're giving out D4s like candy again. This time for attack rolls. Oh, will you look at that? It stacks with Emboldening Bond and Bardic Inspiration. Oh, so we've just got a situation where two of our characters in the party are getting plus 2d4 on one attack per round and plus 1d4 on the rest. And we can use our bonus action to give them an extra 1d6 just in case that's not enough. And on top of that, one of the characters in this group is a rogue. And rogues are only making one attack. They just want to be as accurate as possible with that attack to, get their sneak attack damage. So, this many bonuses is going to reliably make sure that the rogue is getting their damage, even against high AC opponents. So, that's our first spell for this level. I don't want to spend too much on this level, because we've got 6. So, what we're going to want is, I would say, probably want Protection from Good and Evil, which is just it's another great defensive spell that we can put on people. And what this one allows us to do is we can pick a target, and if we're fighting undead or fiends or anything like that, then that target is warded, and enemies get disadvantage on attacks against them. I think you get advantage on saves against their abilities, and you're immune to Charmed and Frightened. And obviously, if you put that on someone with a good armor class, then they can just stand there all day long, and the enemy are going to have a hard time hurting them. And if they do, you've got healing spells for days. So that's a good defensive buff. So you'll notice that all of these are unfortunately concentration. That's just a factor of the game. So you're going to need to pick whether you want Heroism, which is our defensive buff against most things, Bless, which is our offensive buff, Protection from Good and Evil, which is our defensive buff against skeletons and fiends and the like, and or Sanctuary, which is again another all-round defensive buff. Now, as a cleric, we can ritually cast any rituals that we have prepared for so we can ritually cast any rituals that we have prepared, and we can switch these out as needed, but Detect Magic is just generally useful to have. So we're going to have that, and in a pinch, we are going to be able to go, oh, Detect Magic. We'll cast that as a ritual. And now I'm just going to quickly check something here, because I'm not quite as well organised as maybe I could be. Okay, so sadly, Detect Poison and Disease is a ritual, and it fits with our wondrous cooking skills, because I know I mentioned it the first go round, I think I might have missed it this time. Our Brewer's Kit allows us to detect poison in drinks. Our Cooking Utensils allows us to detect poison in food. And our Herbalism Kit allows us to identify poisons. So we're just going to go along with that and just roll with it and grab Detect Poison and Disease as a ritual. And, okay, so that's pretty good. We have no shortage of options for our first level slots. And now we're going to have 2 second level slots to fill out. Now, we've got a couple of good options here, but I'm going to go for the 2 best options. And they are Calm Emotions. Now, Calm Emotions is potentially either a buff or an attack, technically. But it's an attack that ends the fight. It's an area of effect spell, and if the enemy fail their saves, their hostile attitude becomes indifferent. And that means you can turn any combat encounter potentially into a non-combat encounter, which is kind of fitting for a non-combatant. So it's probably going to be our only spell that targets the enemy, but it's going to be a good one. It can also dispel charm and fear effects, which, you know, this party is just generally going to be very resistant to that, particularly since we've also got a bard who is going to have countersong. And there are plenty of charm effects that rely on charisma saves, and in this group everyone has charisma 20, so yeah, I don't think that being charmed is going to be a major issue for this group. So our final spell for second level is going to be Enhanceability. Now, Enhanceability is a great spell. I would argue it's one of the best buff spells in the game for out of combat. What you do is, when you cast it, you pick an ability, and for the next hour, up to. It is a concentration spell. Your target, or targets if you upcast, because it's one extra person per level above second, get advantage on all attribute checks with that ability. Now, we've recently, in my other group, we've actually been playing, and my roguelike warlock, warlock with the criminal background, but he doubles as a rogue for our party, because we don't have a designated rogue, got advantage on dexterity checks, and that included stealth, initiative, picking locks, and, just general roguing stuff. And obviously, if you're scouting, that is massive. But, another good one? Wisdom. Advantage on all your perception checks. Oh, if you're on point, that is the difference between being ambushed and not. Or, we're going to be going into a social situation, and most of the party have minimal social abilities. Well, that's fine. Enhanceability, charisma. Suddenly, everyone has advantage on all of their social checks. Or advantage wisdom again. Advantage on all your insight checks, so that you can tell when you're being lied to. It's really flexible. And then, as if that wasn't enough, if you enhance a physical ability, you get an extra bonus. It's not a big one. Strength doubles their carry capacity. Dex gets reduced fall damage, and Constitution gives temporary hit points. So, that's another thing to keep in mind. And it also makes it much easier for the rogue with enhanced ability for dexterity to go jumping around and doing crazy acrobatic shit, because if he falls, he's not taking as much damage. So, that is our arsenal of spells. And on top of that, our arsenal includes one other thing, which is not used that much, but is worth remembering for this character, and that is the Aid Another action. And you can use that every round, no cost, to give someone an advantage on something. Which obviously combines well with our ability to hand out D4s like they're candy. And we've got plenty of D6s to hand out too. So, yes, and that is the core of the character. So, final thing, we're just going to be taking average hit points. So we've got 8 plus 1 for con is 9 at first level, and then we get 6 for every level thereafter. So that's 12 plus 9 is 21 hit points. Gear-wise, we are going to... we've got 3d8 hit dice, and our hit dice is 1d8 plus 1, though in practice it's plus 2 because of our cooking utensils. Not going to do all the gear here. Suffice to say, we're not going to be taking any weapons or armor, and we're going to be replacing it with all of the stuff we're proficient with, because that stuff is going to be very useful to us. We're also going to take some spare supplies for each of them, as much as the GM will allow. But yes, that is how I, and possibly you, make a non-combatant character for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I hope you enjoyed.